All set to go? Awesome. Well, listen, firstly, can I just say it's great to be back in my hometown of Christchurch, and welcome to Christchurch, all of you that have travelled here. Can I just acknowledge Simeon Brown, our transport spokesperson. Can I also acknowledge Simon Watts, our climate change spokesperson, and our fantastic candidate for Christchurch Central here, Dale Stevens, who's doing an amazing job. But I just have to say before I begin, I was quite shocked to see Chris Hipkins say yesterday that the economic fundamentals of New Zealand are in good shape. And I just have to point out that we are now the only country in the Asia-Pacific region in a recession, an economic recession, and Kiwis up and down this country are doing it incredibly tough. They are experiencing a cost of living crisis that is going on, and they cannot get ahead despite how hard they work. And I want to tell them that National has an economic plan. We're going to rebuild this economy, so we reduce the cost of living and we get this economy growing again. And when we do that, we can also afford to deliver better public services as a result too. But really what we have to do is we have to strengthen and rebuild our economy. And so what we want to announce today is that we are going to do that through investing more in modern, reliable infrastructure. And a big part of that infrastructure for our future in the transport sector is going to be about accelerating the transition to electric vehicles and also the supporting infrastructure that comes with it. And the problem is this, is that today New Zealand is amongst the worst in the OECD. We have one public EV charger for every 95 EVs in the country. That, to put it in perspective, is the worst in the OECD. When I look at the UK, which has 20, for every 20 EVs, they have one public charger, EV charger. That's where we need to be heading to. And what we know very clearly is that range anxiety for electric vehicles and anxiety about whether they'll be able to get their vehicles charged is a reason for why Kiwis, as a barrier for them for actually embracing EVs as their next car choice. So we want to announce today that we're going to invest in a comprehensive national-wide network of 10,000 chargers that will be in place by 2030. And we think that's so important to overcome the single biggest barrier for customers and for New Zealanders thinking about why they wouldn't buy an EV, which is range anxiety. There are 4 parts to our announcement. The first part is that we're going to spend $257 million investment over 4 years to actually power up and deliver those 10,000 chargers by 2030. The second part is that we are going to revive the very successful ultra-fast broadband model, which was actually how we managed to get fast broadband rolled out across this country so successfully by co-investing with business. And we're going to use our National Infrastructure Agency, which is what we've talked about before, for delivering infrastructure and actually funding it and making sure it gets done and delivered well to be able to do this. The third part is that we're going to say for EV charging units, there is no need for resource consents because we will make it a permitted activity under the Resource Management Act. And the final part is our long-standing commitment to scrap the ute tax and the clean car discount by the 1st of December this year. So all of this investment in EV infrastructure and charging infrastructure sits alongside our broader policy around electrifying New Zealand, which we talked about a few months ago. And that is quite simply that we are blessed in this country with sustainable renewable electricity. We want to double the amount of renewable electricity to make it abundant, to make it cheap, and to make it freely available so the transition can happen at a greater pace. And part of that was to say, if you want to make investments in renewable energy projects like wind farms and solar farms and geothermal, that actually we will consent that within 1 year, and that consent will last for a period of 35 years. And if there's investment and upgrades happening around transmissions and local lines, there is no need for any resource consents. It's all part of our plan to make sure that we actually double the amount of renewable electricity. We can actually support the transition by building out a 10,000 EV charger by 2030, and importantly make sure that New Zealand meets its emissions goals from here on through as well. So with that, I want to pass to Simeon Brown, maybe to pass a few more comments around the detail around the policy. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Leader, and thank you everyone for being here. This is about building the modern, reliable infrastructure that New Zealand needs by giving the role to the National Infrastructure Agency to do this rollout of charges across New Zealand. We will be ensuring that this happens, and we'll be cutting the red tape to ensure that the National Infrastructure Agency can use this funding to maximise private sector investment so that this rollout can happen as quickly as possible. This will be a nationwide rollout in our cities, in our towns, in tourist hotspots. This is about ensuring that everywhere that people drive, there'll be EV chargers available for them. So I'm very proud of this policy. We've worked very closely with a number of people in the sector, and I know it's going to make a huge difference for New Zealand's future. Thank you.
Awesome. Yep.
Are you confident the demand is there for 10,000 EV chargers?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, again, you look at the ratio of cars to charging units. We know that's a major problem, and that is the major investment that we need to be able to make and catalyse. I think as government, we're best at when we're working on what we call network effects, and that's what we're doing here. Is we're going to use the National Infrastructure Agency to follow the same model we use with ultra-fast broadband to make sure that we build out 10,000 chargers up and down the country where it's most needed.
Will we see EV chargers in remote areas like up the East Coast, for example?
Yeah, absolutely, and that's one of the real strengths of the ultra-fast broadband model was that actually, a Crown Infrastructure Partners, as it was, which is now going to become the National Infrastructure Agency, will be able to make certain that we can actually get that tailoring to where there may be less demand, but we actually want those services and those charges we put into place.
That it won't just be directed at cities.
That's right.
Correct.
Remote areas.
Correct. Just like it was with ultra-fast broadband, yes.
How much will this policy reduce our emissions?
Well, again, what we've got to do is it's actually about how do we increase the uptake of EVs, and one of the biggest barriers now is not actually getting people into EV purchases themselves, because what we're seeing from manufacturers is they're making big commitments. Already some manufacturers are talking about half of their production being electric vehicles in the next few years. Certainly by 2030, many manufacturers talk about 100% of their production being in electric vehicles. So the products are there, the cars are there, and the prices are coming down, as you're seeing, as scale in the production actually happens. The biggest issue and concern is actually range anxiety about will I be able to travel a country like New Zealand and actually be able to get access to a charger.
But you haven't done emissions profiling on this policy.
Well, what's really clear for us is that we know that we've got to get our emissions down, and the way we do that is we accelerate the transition to EVs, and we need to be able to take one of the barriers away, which is uncertainty around range and therefore charges.
As you pointed out, one of the other barriers is price. Right? So if you are scrapping the clean car discount, that makes newer cars more expensive, and arguably they're already well out of the reach of especially low-income New Zealanders. So will you have a policy to help the uptake of EVs among those who earn the least?
Well, what we think is that the market's going to take care of that itself. You're already seeing, even if you just think the last 3 years, we've had a range of cars come in at a range of price points from a range of manufacturers, frankly, and they're actually populating all parts of the market. But as EVs have become more popular around the world, what you're seeing is scaled production, and as a result, the costs are coming down. And you would have seen, even over the last year, a number of EV manufacturers taking their prices down deliberately, because as they scale up and get production and scale benefits, they get lower costs and therefore lower prices. So that problem is going to solve itself. Yes, they have been in recent years more expensive, but what you're seeing increasingly is downward pressure on EVs because of they're becoming more popular and more scaled as a production, and pricing will become more normalised. And then customers will are choosing those cars because they like this, the fact they're only paying 30 cents a litre equivalent with respect to the alternative being fossil fuels.
And are you committed, speaking of emissions, are you committed to our 2030 target under the Paris Agreement?
Yeah, we're deeply committed to delivering on net carbon zero 2050. That's our goal. That's our goal.
But not 2030.
Well, we've made some. We've got to look at the NDC targets for 2030, but our major commitment is around net zero 2050. That's what we've committed to. We're very signed up for.
If we don't meet the commitments under 2030, we're facing billions and billions in bills, and it's baked into trade agreements.
No.
How are you going to get around that if we're not?
We are going to meet our commitments and our obligations. We are going to meet our commitments and obligations. No, I am confident. We've got to get moving and we've got to get our emissions down. And one of the ways that we do that is we actually flood the market with renewable electricity, and we do that by doubling that. Well, I'm just saying to you, the commitment that we have made and that we've all made around the world is our net carbon zero 2050 commitment. That is the one that we have to hit, is non-negotiable. We have to meet it.
No, the 2030 is almost more important because we.
No, I understand.
We face, a bill if we don't hit that 2030 target. So right now, can you say, are you committed to that 2030 NDC?
We are committed to meeting our climate obligations and our commitments that we have laid out. No doubt about
yes
it.
To 2030.
We're going to meet our commitments that we have made and signed up for globally. Absolutely.
Will National commit to having a climate change minister in cabinet, unlike your opposition?
Yes, we will. I think climate change is going to become, it already is a very important portfolio, but if you think about how it's going to be shaped and move forward over the future, it's going to become increasingly a very economic portfolio that's critical to everything that we do. So if you just think about the progression of the climate change agenda and what a minister has had to deal with 10 years ago versus 5 years ago versus today, and what they're going to need in 5, 10, 15 years from now, it's going to become a very important role.
Given it's a climate announcement today,
I'll let Simon.
will National commit to reducing its emissions from agriculture and transport in its first term?
I'll let Simon talk to this.
Yeah, absolutely. So National's already released our policy around agricultural emissions. We actually were one of the first parties to release a clear roadmap around that. Agricultural emissions account for around 50% in terms of the emission profile, and we're also investing around research and development, which is one of the key elements that are doing that.
From agriculture and transport in your first term of government?
Well, we've committed in order to invest in research and development, which will lead to supplements, which is one of the key aspects around reducing methane emissions from animals. It is. The supplements will reduce emissions, and we're going to support the investment in that in order to achieve that.
So you are saying you are committing to reducing emissions for agriculture and transport in the first term?
That's right, and that's what we're doing as part of the announcement today in regards to providing the enablement infrastructure to allow people to transition to EVs.
Christopher Luxon, did your wife use the clean car discount?
Again, as I've said before, those are my wife's financial affairs and up to her. I've got the Piaggio Zip 50cc scooter, as you well know. But the principle is a very simple one, that as we say with this government, that it's a very untargeted approach. Why should people who can afford to pay actually get a subsidy for an EV, and therefore we've got tradies and farmers who have essential vehicles that actually get punished for actually having to buy a ute when there is no alternatives. And that's why we have been very much against this program for a long time. We've said we would scrap it, and that's what we're going to do on the 1st of December.
We've got some
Yes.
questions from... There's a lot that Labour's putting out there at the moment, so I've just got some quick fires, if you would.
Sure.
Will you abolish the minimum wage?
No.
Will you lower the minimum wage?
No.
Will you sack all the teachers?
No.
Will you cut sick leave back to 5 days?
Absolutely not.
Will you cut funding for teachers, nurses, schools and hospitals?
Absolutely not. We want to spend more on health and education every single year under our government.
Are those lies from Labour?
Well, I'd just say the Labour Party is incredibly desperate, and they will say and do anything they can to try and win an election. They have had 6 years, they are in desperation, and as a result, 8 days out from election, they can say whatever they want.
Are they playing dirty?
Well, again, they are desperate. It's a very desperate Labour Party who clearly are saying anything they can to try and win an election.
On petrol prices, the Comcom has written again to petrol companies asking them to please explain about some anomalies in terms of pricing. What are your thoughts on that, and what would National do to help lower petrol prices?
Well, again, I'll let Simeon talk to this actually in particular. Yep.
Look, I think this government put in place the market study, said they were going to solve this problem, but actually they haven't. The reality is they're actually going to be putting fuel prices up by 12 cents a litre when their excise increase happens. So the government can beat their chest. They're actually going to be putting petrol prices up by 12 cents a litre if they're re-elected. National won't.
And what's National's plan to get prices down?
Well, the key thing is we need to have more competition, and that's the role the Commerce Commission has to ensure that the competitive pressure is being applied, and to make sure that the regulatory powers that they have are being applied. So let's hope that that does put some pressure on petrol prices. But I can just say to you, if Labour's re-elected, they'll be putting petrol prices up by another 12 cents a litre.
We have the ACT Party, Mr Luxon.
Yep.
We have had another ACT Party candidate withdraw from the list. Are you concerned about the calibre of candidates we're seeing withdraw from the ACT Party?
Oh, look, that's an issue for the ACT Party. What I'm very proud about is the number of candidates and great candidates we have in the National Party, and many of them are here. Dale Stephens is a great example of that, many others that are here as well from Christchurch, and so incredibly proud of the candidates that we have.
The ACT Party, though, will be your coalition partner. So
I'm not the leader of the ACT Party, I'm the leader of the National Party, and I'm focused on making sure I've got the best team to go into this election with, who've got great talent that can augment the fantastic people we've already got.
they're dropping like flies. Are you worried about that?
I'm focused on the National Party. That's what I'm the leader of the National Party, and I'm making sure I've got the best talent and team that I can assemble, and I'm incredibly proud of our candidates.
I have some other quickfire rule and rule outs from these are
Yes.
policy. So, would you abolish fees free?
No.
Would you abolish first home grant?
No.
Would you halt super fund contributions?
No, that's not our policy.
Sell land court?
Not our policy.
Abolish Callaghan Innovation?
Not our policy.
Abolish all film subsidies?
Not our policy.
Abolish R&D grants and tax credits?
Not our policy.
Scrap the Climate Change Commission?
Not our policy.
Scrap the clean car discount?
Well, we've just talked about that today.
Abolish market?
Absolutely, we will scrap it.
Would you abolish the market?
I'll tell you what we will abolish is we are not going to put fuel prices up in our first term of government, because it seems a bit silly, to be honest, to take some cents off some beans and some carrots only to add $6 or $8 for a tank of petrol each week to go down to the supermarket to get those carrots and beans. It doesn't seem smart to add $26,000 to a truck.
Act does seem pretty adamant on asset sales. So again, can you rule out that there will be no asset sales under your Prime Minister?
I've done that a year or so ago. I said to you at the time there'll be no asset sales is not something we're focused on or not interested in.
And what about all the ministries that the ACT Party wants to abolish? Will you walk out of there with the same number of ministries?
These are all hypothetical questions. We'll deal with that in government. But what I'm telling you is we are focused on making sure we deliver for New Zealanders. That means we have to rebuild this economy. New Zealanders are struggling to get ahead. That's why you're seeing practical, common sense ideas, in fact 38 policies, all put together in a wonderful pledge card in order to say this is our plan to take New Zealand forward, because we have a great country. We have so much potential, but we are not realising it at the moment.
What about abolishing co-governance from all?
The car that you showed up on to the events today, was that an EV?
No, it's a government-issued car. Yeah.
Well, you think you should do something about that?
Oh, I do. I think we should be continuing to drive into EVs across the government fleet. Absolutely. I think we should be trying to do that. Absolutely. I did that when I was CEO of Air New Zealand. I moved all our company car fleet to EVs back in 2015. I'm a big proponent of that.
Would you abolish co-governance from all government arrangements?
We've said we do not believe in co-governance of public services. We are one country. We actually provide public services to people on the basis of their needs, not their ethnicity, and we're all equal under the law, one person, one vote. Okay, thank you very much. Appreciate it, guys. Have a good day. See ya.